Hospital porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2020. Big D Declassification. Yeah, it's not Big D Disclosure yet, but it is Big D Declassification. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because I thought I ought to expand on some of the points I brought up in a previous video. That is UFOs a reply to Morgoth's review. I did say I'd go into more details about this. And indeed I have covered the events or the incidents or the subjects that I am talking about here on the Hapanwo Voice blog. Now I know there's a lot of compartmentalisation among my audience. It's a lot of you who watch Hapanwo TV don't actually read the Hapanwo Voice blog, and I know vice versa. There's a lot of people who read that blog who don't bother with my YouTube channel. But it's worth actually nipping between the two, because I occasionally cover things on one which I won't cover on the other. So please do check out both of them. And indeed all the details are actually in on the Hapanwo Voice blog. I've also got a link in the description box to my UFO Disclosure portal. Now, since I last did a UFO Disclosure video, I decided to put all of them, plus my ones I've done on Hapanwo Radio and Hapanwo Voice, and indeed the Ben's bookcase links to various things to do with the Roswell books, the Roswell trilogy. I've decided to put them all on a single portal, and it's just called the Disclosure portal. It's on the main Hapanwo site, and you can check that out by the link in the description box. It saves me putting rows and rows of links to various things. Although I do have a link to the previous, a separate link to the previous instalment in this particular series of videos. Now, the reason I am bringing this up is because of what, as I said to Morgoth, there's been a formal declassification by the US government. The Department of Defense has formally released, officially, what's known as the AATIP footage. That is the 3 videos that were basically, that fell into the hands of the press in December, over a period leading up to December 2017, when they were published by the To the Stars Academy. Now, I had a feeling something like this was going to happen, and I said so at the time. I think I might have mentioned it in the January the 1st video I did in this series. I said that something was brewing. Now, the reason and indeed that continued, that process continued, because on January the 12th, the Department of Defense came out with a statement that they had more evidence on top of what had already been leaked. That means they had more footage, longer, possibly longer videos, maybe longer versions of the videos we've seen, maybe more videos. But also there was other things. There was separate pieces of evidence which might actually be even more interesting than the footage. As I said to Morgoth, the footage is not that spectacular to look at in terms of aesthetics, and it's not meant to be. It's not there to look pretty. It's there to. This is a military gun camera footage. It's there to serve a purpose, which is to identify friends and foes, select targets, discern them from friendly aircraft or civilian aircraft. And so it's not meant to look good. So. But still, the footage is spectacular. It's some of the most spectacular UFO evidence that's ever been released. Also, but there's more. There's more. What might be even more interesting is the telemetry. Now, this telemetry includes things such as radar logs, firing solutions, and things such as that, which will tell you more about the objects that were seen, possibly you'll see in those visuals. Now, if these do exist, now they haven't declassified them, but the reason the government have actually said something. This statement that came from the Pentagon, which I actually reported on in Hapanwo Voice, was very interesting to read, because it made a very significant distinction between the content of the evidence and the reason why it was still top secret. It was not top secret because of the content of the evidence itself. It was top secret because for subsidiary reasons. That is, that it could, if it was released, it might reveal something about how that evidence was gathered, which might give away the capabilities of warships and aircraft and things like that, or intelligence gathering sources and things like that. Say, possibly some kind of spy or undercover agent in some Department of Defense area who needed to remain anonymous, things like that. And so that's the reason it was being held back. Now, in the meantime, more pilots came forward. I mean, in UFO Truth magazine, which, as you know, I write for, Chad Underwood came forward. Now, he's another pilot. I think he's the third pilot that's actually come forward and said that he saw this sort of thing. Now, so David Fravor is no longer alone. There was a second guy who was interviewed by Luis Elizondo in that documentary, Unidentified, which I've seen the first episode. I should watch the rest of it, actually, at some point. It's on my list of things to do. But so Chad Underwood is... he's very bravely spoken out as well, along as the other guys from the Nimitz, the radar guys from the Nimitz and things like that. So there's a lot of people in violation of their security oaths are speaking out. Now, what I hope is that they will be released from those oaths. Now, this is part of the Truth and Reconciliation plans suggested by Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel in their book AD After Disclosure, which I very much recommend. Those of you who read the Roswell trilogy will know that there's something similar in that, which means basically that the people will be able to speak out. People involved in the truth embargo can speak out without the fear of legal prosecution. So there basically, once the information is declassified, those keeping it are then no longer obliged to keep it. We're seeing this sort of thing now. We are seeing basically the government coming forward and just rubber stamping what's already happened. That is, this material is leaked. I mean, the big question is, if it hadn't leaked, would they have done that? And the answer is I don't know. I don't know. Probably not, actually. But the very fact that they have declassified UFO evidence, it's been downplayed a little bit. I mean, and I understand that. People say, well, it is just simply rubber stamping a situation that already exists. I realise that. I realise that they are simply declassifying something that was already illicitly entered the public domain. I mean, it's good in a way, because it means whoever leaked it now doesn't have to worry, because hopefully there will be... That's truth and reconciliation truth and reconciliation situation I talked about. That's what. But I still think that the formal declassification by the Pentagon of UFO footage is legally significant. I mean, UFO Jesus and Ryan, you know, Post-Disclosure World, he did a very good video on this subject. It sets a precedent. That's what I'm saying. It sets a common law precedent which could expand into other areas. It'll make it easier for possibly other UFO secrets to come out, and it does feel that this could be could have a snowball effect. This declassification could have a snowballing effect, so it gathers pace. As Richard Dolan said, he says this truth embargo really is past its shelf life. It's starting to feel like a secret that needs to come out. I'll say more at the end of this video about that, actually, because Richard Dolan has just done a very interesting video on this subject, a very interesting interview on this subject, which is worth watching. And at the end of the day, it is a massive vindication for people like me, because we've had insiders come into us, and this includes myself exclusively. I mean, they come to people like us and they've said, look, I'm an insider, I've got this evidence here, don't tell my name, you can't publish this formally, you know, you can't publish this properly, you can just say you've got it and describe it, but you know, you're not going to get a paper trail back to the source, because that would get me into trouble. And now we have that paper trail, and it's complete. All the questions that came up in December 2017, is it real? Is it from the US government? Is there more information? Does it have a proper source? All those have been answered. And it's really, it is remarkable. It is not disclosure with a capital D, but it is declassification with a capital D. This one event in itself is not revolutionary, but put it all together with other events, it might well be. It might well lead to that. And Richard Dolan's talking about this. So yeah, it's something that's... It could be the start of a process that could lead to disclosure with a capital D. And as I said, this is what people like me have been saying. Not, you know, people like me have been saying this for so long, right? And we've been laughed at, haven't we? We've said for years and years and years that this evidence is out there, and the answer we've had is, oh no it doesn't, you made that up. Well, the bloke you're talking to made it up. You're a fool, you're an idiot for pursuing this. And now, well, I'd like to say this was a vindication. It's not quite. I mean, it's quite interesting. Again, UFO Jesus talks about this. I haven't actually listened to the interview yet, the latest interview with Michael Shermer, but the skeptics are doubling down. I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen. They're not giving in. There's a guy called Tim West. He's been on the Joe Rogan show about 3 times actually, and he did a video. I put a comment on it because it was just so. I don't think angry is the right word. It was just contemptible. It was pathetic. This guy said, "Oh no, look, it's pretty easy what these things are. You see that's a plane. You see that thing there's a plane, and a little white tic tac, right? That's a seagull." So, David Fravor, if you're listening, this guy knows more about these things than you, Mister. You're a Top Gun pilot for the U.S. Navy, but you've been proved wrong by this YouTube geek. What do you have to say to that, Commander Fravor? Dearie me. This is worse than the bloody lighthouse theory to do with Rendlesham Forest. I mean, you're onto a good thing, right? When the skeptic explanations become more outlandish than what the ufologists come out with. Yeah, you really are. It really is amazing. So that's another piece of information that's come out. So that's basically the situation we're in now. Where it'll go from here, I don't know. At the moment, we just have this declassification. Now, several other things. Something else has happened. I'm sure it's not a coincidence this happened at the same time. But a lot of people have been putting comments on this, on other videos about this. A lot of people have written to me about this. Nick Redfern has published a new book, and it is about the Rendlesham Forest incident. This went live on Amazon a couple of days ago. I know somebody who's actually got a copy. I know 2 people actually got copies. I haven't ordered one myself yet. I will have to at some point. But at the moment, I'm trying to read research books for my own novel. And it's now I've not read the book, so I don't know his entire thesis. But he has talked openly. He's talked openly about this subject. He's saying that the Rendlesham Forest incident was nothing. It was not an ET event at all. It was actually a mind control operation. It was a mind control test or exercise or time and motion study, or whatever you might want to call it, involving holograms and drugs, and along the lines of MK Ultra. I think that's a general summary which he has revealed, which is the thesis of the book. Firstly, that's not terribly original. People have been saying this sort of thing about Rendlesham Forest incident for a long time. They've come up with all kinds of ideas about why this was some kind of mind control event, and it was nothing to do with ETs. It's actually the idea that there's some kind of psyop involving ETs, and that ETs, UFOs, flying saucers, are a part of that. They're a part of neo-mythology that has been created to be a part of that. It's actually a very fashionable idea at the moment, and it's not terribly edgy to come up with that. But I don't think I really should say any more until I've read Nick's book. I really think it would be dishonest of me to try and judge the book by its cover, so to speak. But I will read it. I'll read what other people have made of it, and at some point I'll have to read it myself, won't I? I will. I read Andrew Pike's book, and this massive bloody doorstep of a book. God, it was huge. I read that. That was, again, it was another attempt. It was another attempt to. In this case, we was explaining it as, again, it was a delusion caused. It was a delusion and not real ETs, but it was caused by natural phenomena, not an artificial phenomena. But it didn't really make any sense. But anyway, that's my answer to that. That's my answer to the subject to do with Nick Redfern's book, and I won't say any more now until I've read it, because I could read it and find it makes sense. Unlikely based on what he said compared to what I've heard from other people, but you can't know what a book's about until you've read the book. Now, there was another amazing thing that happened actually in January. It was quite remarkable. Helen Sharman announced she believed in aliens. Now, Helen Sharman was the first British person in space. It was not Tim Peake. Yeah, a lot of people think it was Tim Peake. It wasn't. He was the first British astronaut. Now, I should point out that I knew this would happen. The Guardian has been making a big deal out of this, saying Tim Peake. Everyone thinks Tim Peake was the first Briton in space because he's a white male. And Helen Sharman is a woman. The truth of the matter is, actually, that no one's pretending that. Tim Peake's not pretending that. No one is saying that Tim Peake is the first Briton in space. That's just the Guardian made that up for the usual reasons, which I've covered before. Tim Peake was an astronaut. Technically, Helen Sharman was not an astronaut. She was a passenger. And in sort of space technical terms, in legal terms, and space in terms of space crew technicalities, and not everyone who gets on board a spaceship and goes into space is an astronaut. Helen Sharman was not an astronaut, but she was part of a space mission. She was on an 8-day mission to the Mir space station, which was a predecessor to the International Space Station. She was the first British person in space, and no one, least of all Tim Peake or any of Tim Peake's fans or supporters, have tried to take that away from her. That's a complete nonsense. That was her achievement, and it always will be. But she did something which is actually very brave. I think getting on a rocket and going up to a space station takes guts, but really I think it takes even more guts when you're a public figure and an intellectual and an academic with a career and a reputation to say you believe in aliens. But Helen Sharman has done it. She said, she made a speech. It was an interview with The Guardian, and she said, she believes there's space. Firstly, she said she believes that there's life out there in the universe, and that's not terribly controversial at all. I'll come on to that in a minute. I cover that in more detail in my SETI videos. But she says maybe they're down here, we just can't see them. She said, sorry, my nose is itching. She said maybe the aliens are already down here and we just can't see them. Now that is controversial. If you're a distinguished mainstream academic, you're allowed to believe in aliens as long as you believe they're millions of miles away and will never ever talk to them except with radio telescopes and having to wait 25 years to say hello because of the speed of light, as I say in my SETI video. So well done, Dr. Sharman. She's, like I say, she's an academic, she's a chemistry professor. Well done, Professor Sharman, for that. Much appreciated. Now, the Space Force has taken another step. The commander of the Space Force has been sworn in. General, what's his name? I can't remember what his name is. But he's a general. He's a full-star general. He sits on the Joint Chiefs of Staff now as a member of the sixth branch of the Armed Forces, along with Navy, Air Force, and Army, and the others. And so it's a fully fledged, organised branch, U.S. military branch now, an armed force. And indeed, they've even put up a trailer. I've seen like recruitment videos on YouTube. Yeah, you could put up you go up there and they say, do you want a career in the Space Force? And they show some people. In uniforms. The uniforms. People often ask me about the uniforms. Say, why do the uniforms look so much like the others? For example, they have the ratings. The enlisted men, they wear disruptive pattern material suits, which you associate with land forces. But that is with the camouflage, they wear that. And you say, well, why do they wear that? They're in the Space Force. And the reason is, there's two reasons. Firstly, it's just kind of a traditional thing. Secondly, it's cheaper because the tailor, they don't need to design a complete new line with the tailor. The tailor can simply run off the same suits they've been running off for ages and ages and ages, and you just stick different badges on them. Indeed, the suits which make up the dress uniforms for the officers are the same suits that the Air Force wear. They just have different badges, so it's cheaper. It's easier and cheaper. You don't have to design a complete new uniform, unless they're planning on invading Endor, of course. Of course, you'd need those camouflages in those woods, wouldn't you? But the commander was sworn in. He said his oath and everything like that. And there was they sang There was a choir sang the national anthem. It was only about half an hour long. Mike Pence was there. It seems that Trump has delegated a lot of space issues to his vice president. Now, I saw a fascinating article which claimed it was, I think it was from one of the Q posters, but they brought some very interesting evidence to bear based on national emergency protocols and contingency plans. And one of those is that the Space Force could actually work to protect against internal subversion. In other words, if there's an attempted coup d'etat against the executive, the Space Force would operate as a in a kind of counter-revolutionary way, or against the coup. And it's very interesting. This article talked about what happened during the Iran crisis. Of course, as you know, the Iran crisis was one of the first things that broke out this year. I did a big live stream about it. Well, I should have waited maybe a few more days before the live stream, because a lot happened. Alright, I suppose I could have done a second live stream, but it's incredible what happened. Now Trump did something very, very clever. He managed to de-escalate the entire situation. It was an absolute work of genius as a statesman. It really is. I mean, this is a guy with no political experience at all before he became president, and he achieved things that very experienced politicians could. And maybe it's because of that. It was like that line from the Gladiator, you know, Maximus, this is why it must be you. And he says, I don't know their politics. Yes, but you've not been corrupted by their politics. Maybe Trump is like that. He's not been corrupted by their politics. So what happened was, if you remember, there was a drone strike on a car in Iraq, not Iran, in Iraq. General Soleimani, who's head of I think it was called the Foreign Legion, was killed. Now what happened was Iran had to retaliate. Now Iran launched a series of strike missiles at American bases in Iraq. These hit the bases, they detonated, there was explosions, damage was done, but there were no casualties. Now then Trump went on TV and explained the situation. He said there was no need to take any further action in the situation, and this was perfect because it means the Americans, he had now had a pretext to back down, to basically cancel any further action against Iran, and the Iranians had managed, by striking back with their missiles, they'd saved face. They'd done something as an act of revenge against Soleimani's assassination. How did he achieve this? How did Trump achieve this? Well, this article claims that the Space Force helped him. What happened was a SpaceX rocket launched just a little while earlier on a mission for the Space Force, and it was a classified mission, but we know that the rocket was over Iran at the time those missiles were launched. What I think happened was Trump, using intelligence, maybe from human intelligence sources inside Iran as well, but also probably from electronics intelligence gathered by the Space Force satellites flying over Iran, Trump managed to work out exactly where those missiles were going to be fired, at which bases, and he evacuated them before those missiles were launched. It's an absolute work of genius. Of course, it's infuriated his enemies, the never-Trumpers, the pro-Israelis, the neocons. It's absolutely infuriated these people, because they thought they'd manoeuvred Trump into a position where he'd have to go to war and go out on a full-out regime change against Iran, and he outmanoeuvred them. So another strike for the God Emperor there. Yeah, make America great again. Yeah, Russell. See Russell standing by, shoulder to shoulder with Boris and Trump there. Also, now there was this, I don't know if I'll talk about this in detail. I may go into this in another video, because it's something that takes a lot of analysis, but there's a guy called Randy Kramer. You may have heard of him, and he's been on the Kev Baker show a few times. And he was saying about how there may well be a fake alien invasion coming up. I've said myself that unfortunately the most likely disclosure with a capital D we're going to get will be fake disclosure with a capital D, because firstly the Illuminati will want to use it as a sort of double or quits final push for the New World Order. If they're desperate enough, if they're like a cornered rat, they'll fight something 10 times their size. They'll lash out in desperation. Also, it's a very, very good sort of spin doctor's trick for getting the government out of this very nasty hole they've dug themselves. And you can just see it, can't you? You can just see the press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, UFOs are real. We didn't tell you. Now, we wanted to, but you see, they're really evil. And we kept it from you as a matter of... it was classified and for defence reasons. We've been engaged in a secret war against these aliens for a long time. And that's why we didn't tell you. You know, it's not because we didn't want you to have the free energy and stuff like that. It's not because we didn't want you to know we weren't alone because of the psychological effects it'll have, a la the Brookings Institute. No, it wasn't that. It was because they were evil. Now, quite frankly, I can't see any other way the keepers of the truth embargo could get away with what they've done unless they do what I've just said. The thing about Randy Kramer is, in this talk, is that he actually believes that a fake alien invasion is justified. And now he's a bit of a misanthrope. I mean, I think he's a humanitarian, but he's quite misanthropic. He has a pretty dim view of his fellow man. It's the usual thing, you know. There'll be public panic, and he actually believes that fake disclosure could lead to real disclosure. I should have, like, maybe I won't go into it in any more detail now, I think, because it may need a video of its own because it's long and complicated and it takes me too far off topic. But it was very interesting. In some ways it was annoying, but in other ways it was very interesting. So I'll cover that perhaps in the future. Now, at the same time this happened, guess what? The Garidian. It always comes down to the bloody Guardian, doesn't it? They put out an article how there was going to be a new major push for the SETI Institute and the SETI movement. So basically, the whole breakthrough listen thing was going to have another go, stuff like that. And I thought to myself, is that a coincidence? It's odd, but the SETI, I mean, as Friedman called it, silly effort to investigate. Stephen Bassett was even more scathing, and quite frankly, they're right to be, because it is a distraction, it is disinformation. As I explain in my longer talks about SETI, and I won't put links in the description box to those, but you can find them. Just put SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, just put it into the search box on the catalogue, you'll find it. They seem to be, they may be bumping that up to, because of renewed focus on the UFO issue. So they're like saying let's make a big announcement about SETI so that all those people looking at the UFOs will look over here. That's what I think happened there. There was also God. On BBC Radio 4 there was an episode of The Infinite Monkey Cage, presented by the absolutely execrable person, Professor Brian Cox. Look at my smiley face and my silky black hair and my little effeminate voice. Yes, he was on there, and he had a group of experts, so-called. Now, there was like a little location report done by Lucy Beaumont, who's actually a comedian from the Manchester area. It was actually her mother who had a UFO sighting or close encounter. All the others, they had this panel of experts in the studio, and good grief, they came out with. This is incredible. I mean, this takes us back to SETI and Carl Sagan and Philip Glass and people like that. There was not one single original thing they said in this entire program. This program is about 45 minutes long. I listened to all of it. And they said not one single original thing. All the talking points attempting to explain UFOs as something else You know the stories: weather balloons, marsh gas, lighthouses, truckloads of burning manure, runaway ice cream vans, all these other things that they come out with were exactly the same as you heard in skeptic programs and skeptic books and skeptic documents dating right back to the start of the UFO era. They literally said nothing original at all in this recent radio show on Radio 4. And it was all centred around that bright, smiling tooth, smug grin of Professor Brian Cox himself, who is the ultimate media whore. He knows nothing about the subjects he talks about. I mean, I'm sure he knows everything about particle physics, but he clearly knows nothing about anything else. Yet this is why they put him on as a media superstar, to comment on everything else, because he knows nothing about it. But he has a king-sized ego, so they can just use him. Oh, I mean, go on, you can find it on the BBC website. They've got a podcast. Just go to BBC iPlayer. Just look for Radio 4. Just put an Infinite Monkey Cage, and you'll see it. The Infinite Monkey Cage is this show. I mean, Cox has been presenting this show since it started a few years ago. He has the odd other people who come on there, and they sometimes tackle things like paranormal, conspiratory, ufological matters in the usual, as I said, in this very, very pat, hackneyed, completely ethically cliched way. It's just I think they're just hoping it'll fall on the ears of people who haven't heard our side of the argument, which is why people like me have this duty and this mission to put the other side of the argument across, so that people get both sides of the story. And I'm quite happy for them to do that. I would never, if I had the ability to try and deplatform Cox and his cohorts and kick them off YouTube and kick them off Twitter like David Icke has been, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I honestly would not do that. I'd just let them have their say. Let them make a fool of themselves. Let them have a biggest platform as possible, so it's the biggest target we can aim at when we shoot them down. There we mean. So another bit of news. Now, some of you might have heard you might have heard a rather shocking and rather sad piece of news in the media. It's been all over the media that Project Blue Book is ending. Yeah, there's been a new story that the History Network is actually axing the show after the end of its second season. And you might think, well, that's crazy, because it was so popular. It was so popular. It was doing really well. It was a really, really great historical drama with the UFO theme. Millions of people watched it. Very, very high, good audience. As I said in my Project Blue Book reviews, it's Project Blue Book. It's incredible when you think about it. The Project Blue Book series must have been in pre-production. In fact, David O'Leary, I think, said that it was actually on the third day of production or something at the time when news broke about the AATIP footage in December 2017. Now, that has been very serendipitous for them. I mean, to talk about striking when the iron was hot. Now, this has helped the programme's success, of course. More people probably watched it as a result of that. But it also, I think, it gives Project Blue Book possibly the honour of being a kind of spirit of the times. So why would history drop something that's so successful and so wonderful? I know people say, oh, it's part of the cover-up. No, you see, because I've actually been in touch with someone on the inside, someone who works closely with the production team, and they told me on good authority that there is going to be a season 3. Now, the reason is the franchise has actually been sold to another network. Now, I don't know for sure. This person wouldn't tell me for certain. But I think it's a Sci-Fi, because I mean, Sci-Fi actually broadcast it here in the UK. I suspect they've sold the entire franchise to them, and there will be a season 3, and it will be on there. Because if you remember, season 2 ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, didn't it? Episode 10, as you remember, Captain Quinn was diving down to the bottom of the sea in a submarine, and he vanishes, and then Hynek goes off on a quest to find him using this mysterious map with energy lines on it and things like that. So surely that does absolutely sets it up for season 3. I think, based on what I've heard on good authority, there will be a season 3. So don't worry, because I know a lot of you really love the adventures of Dr. J. Allen Hynek and Michael Quinn and the others, and their various friends and foes and people kind of in between. It's a great series. They are going to be returning to your screen soon. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, mystery ships. Now, people have been reporting mystery ships. Now, there's a whole load of ships that are appearing off the coast of California. Now, these are oil tankers, and they can't dock and unload their oil because the lockdown has basically slashed demand very suddenly before supply has had a chance to adjust. So there's no real mystery there. But there are a number of strange ships that have been appearing in what some people call the Bristol Channel. It's the sea between South Wales and the English West Country, sort of Devon, Cornwall, and Somerset area. And we in Wales call it the Severn Sea. It's a much better name. Why name a sea after an inland city in England? More Havron, yeah, Severn Sea. These ships. Now again, I've been contacted by people saying, "Oh, it's just completely normal. It's just normal manoeuvres. These ships are just doing what ships always do, dropping anchor and waiting until they can get into Port Talbot." Possibly, but it may have something to do with a vast increase in the number of UFO sightings in the area. I do wonder if these have been chartered, because the thing is that this has happened before. Because if you look at the Glomar Explorer, this happened in the 70s. A few years earlier, a Russian submarine sank in the Pacific Ocean, really deep water, far too deep, so deep that they thought no one would ever find it again, and they wanted to find it because it had nuclear weapons on board. It was a ballistic missile submarine, K-28 I think it was called. So they sent a ship called the Glomar Explorer, which is like essentially it was an oil prospecting ship, but it had on board, the CIA actually bought it up and they commandeered it secretly, and it had on board a special device for raising this submarine from the bottom of the sea. Yeah. So I cannot. Maybe there's some connection with the massive increase in UFO sightings along the English south coast. A friend of mine actually sent me a photograph taken by her son in Cornwall, showing lights in the sky, and they weren't the Skylink satellites. I mean, and what's more, her other son saw it from another part of the coast. So I asked her to tell me which direction they were in, these lights, because then you can triangulate them and you can work out how far away the lights were, how big they were, things like that. Now I know that some of this can be explained by the lockdown. People who are not working are going to go to bed later. They're going to be looking at the sky more. The skies are clearer because there's fewer aircraft and fewer chemtrails and things. Some of it can be explained that way. Also, of course, the Skylink satellites from Elon Musk, these lines of lights that are going across the sky, they've been reported as UFOs, but these phenomena, these factors do not explain the entire flap. Gary Jones has also been reporting more strange aircraft activity over South Wales, which happened at the same time that these ships appeared, and I do wonder if there's a connection there. Now another piece of news: Area 51. There's a new building being created at Area 51. Now this is something I reported in 2015, I think in one of the early videos of this series, about how a new hangar had been built on Area 51 right at the end of the runway. This 11-mile runway, the longest in the world, had a hangar on one end of it. It was away from the main base complex, and I wondered why that was. It was a strange hangar with a tall door, as if the aircraft inside was very big, like very high up, like it might have been a two-stage aircraft, like a high-flying aircraft plus a space plane on top of it, which separated, like an orbiter which separated it. Alternatively, it could just have a very high tail. Now the reason why was it so far away? Possibly something to do with secrecy, but also I suspected it might have been a safety issue. They wanted that hangar away from the main base campus, possibly because the aircraft used a very exotic fuel which might have been toxic or very volatile, so it could have led to poisoning or fires. And of course, health and safety, I think they bumped up their health and safety procedures since the Robert Frost lawsuit, which forced them to admit Area 51 existed. So that's why I think that 2015 hangar was placed at the end of the runway. The second hangar, this new hangar that they're building at the moment, this was taken. There was a guy called Gabriel Zeifman who had like an old Cessna-like aircraft, and he flew along these airways. Now, Area 51, as you know, is a no-fly zone, but there are some parts of it which are permanently shut off, and others that are temporarily shut off. Now, what happened was these temporary airways were open at the time Zeifman was flying there, so he managed to get about as close to Area 51 as it's possible to get without being shot down. So he took his aircraft right to the edge of the permanently forbidden zone and got some photographs of the base. And that's how we know about this big hangar. This hangar is 450 feet long, and it's the biggest building by far in Area 51, not including the underground stuff, of course. But it's got the inside of it is going to be 3 acres. It's huge. So the aircraft inside is going to be very big. Either that or it's a hangar intended for multiple aircraft. I think this proves beyond doubt that despite some people's claims that Area 51 is basically being scaled down since the end of the Cold War, it's sort of like been stagnated a bit. Some people have claimed that because it was created in 1955 to manage the secret spy plane program, the U-2, which was very famously became public when one was shot down over the Soviet Union. Gary Powers and all that sort of thing, The Bridge of Spies. If you've ever seen that film, that's very good. And ever since, people have said, well, since the Cold War, they've sort of been scaling it down a little bit. They don't really need it anymore since the end of the Cold War. And it's been a long time now. The Cold War, the post-Cold War era has entered its 4th decade now. But Area 51 is still running. Not only that, but the creation of a new hangar proves that Area 51 is vibrant. It's not scaling down at all. Area 51 is still very much in operation, very much indeed. Obviously, there's nothing here directly connected with aliens. It's possible. I mean, I don't discount the possibility. Indeed, Bob Lazar, I think, is quite credible. There are aliens at Area 51. Indeed, there's probably classified projects relating to UFOs and aliens at several other secret bases as well in the United States and elsewhere. Now, this hangar is on the main base campus. It's actually been built in the area where all the other buildings are. This means there's obviously no safety concern here, which must mean the aircraft either runs off normal aviation petroleum or it's an anti-gravity craft. Now, the hangar is what they call a scoot and hide hangar. Now, the one at the 2015 hangar at the end of the runway, that's also a scoot and hide hangar, which is basically designed so an aircraft can get in and out very quickly. Just come out the hangar, get straight onto the runway and get up into the air and then come back again and go in again. Obviously for security purposes. For people, staff at the base who are not cleared to see it in the compartmentalized system won't be able to see it. It's actually built right next to a jetway, actually, on a taxiway, so that it can obviously get very quickly to the runway if it needs to. So that was very interesting that Mr. Zeifman managed to get this amazing photograph of this new hangar. It makes you wonder what's in there. If you want to know a good place to go, if you want to know a lot about Area 51, is the dreamlandresort.com. Now, it's not a UFO site. I mean, they're very anti-UFO on there. They say from the very beginning, if you want to talk about UFOs, you want anything to do with UFOs, don't come here. We're not interested. There's no such thing. All right. So they're very anti-UFO. They don't just ignore it. They're very opposed to it. But they do have a lot of interesting information. They've got these photographs by Zeifman up there already. But it's pretty clear that the fact that Zeifman managed to get so close to Area 51 proves that the management there are not that concerned about secrecy. Otherwise he'd never have been allowed to, and the airways that he was using would be permanently closed. So there's a lot going on at the moment. Let's just check out a few more things. So let's go through some more exopolitical and ufological news in the disclosure arena. Now, as you can see, the 23rd Annual Sonoma International Film Festival, which includes the UFO Symposium and the screening of the phenomenon, is cancelled. Now, this is unfortunately what's happening this year. Every conference that I know of
in the UFO paranormal conspiratorial circuit is cancelled because of the coronavirus. The RawCon in Hull was actually one of the last. Luckily, I went to that one, and as I said to Alan, the organizer, you got in there just in time. So how long that situation will last for, I don't know. I am actually speaking at Truth Seekers Northeast on August the 1st. Fingers crossed for that. That's all I can say. Now, as you see, the phenomenon is due to be shown in the cinemas. This is James Fox's film. I've actually interviewed James Fox for his previous film. I can't remember what that was called, but I have seen it. It's pretty good. There's going to be theatrical distribution in approximately 1,400 cinemas in September. So that will be great if, obviously, fingers crossed for September. Like I said for the other things, fingers crossed for the lockdown to be over by then. Now, I've not seen this film. It looks good. I've seen the trailer. James Fox is a good filmmaker. It'll probably be worth seeing. That's all I can say. But of course, everything's on hold at the moment. But we can only hope. And we have this. This is available now. You can actually watch it on various platforms. A new documentary feature film by Dr. Stephen Greer, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Contact, Consciousness, and the Human Future. And this is Dr. Stephen Greer's third documentary. His previous one was Sirius, and then he's had another one, Unacknowledged. Now, I've seen Unacknowledged and Sirius. Now, they've come under a lot of criticism. People say they're repetitive and they just go over the same material over and over again. I do understand that. I did enjoy both films, but I do think they do lack scope. Now, I must admit that they do lack that kind of scope, and that's a shame. However, someone I know has actually seen this film. I've not seen it yet. I'll probably go and watch it now. They actually share my criticism of the previous two films, and they say this one is different. This one is groundbreaking. This one is original. This one is worth watching. So, well, I think that's a good enough endorsement for me. I think it'll be worth whatever few pounds it costs to watch. I mean, it's, as I said, it's based on, I've seen the trailer, I've seen everything else, so I'll give it a go and let you know. Now, I am really looking forward to this one. I really am. This is the aerial phenomenon. And I've seen the trailer of this. I've looked at Randall Nickerson's work. I looked at his last documentary on the aerial school incident. And this is going to be good. I know this is going to be good. Dan Aykroyd is involved, the Canadian comedian, who's very into UFOs. Like Helen Sharman, he came out as a public figure and a famous person. He came out as a UFO believer, which, as I said, is a very, very courageous thing to do. This, I know it's gone quiet now, and a lot of people say, well, what's been happening? When's this coming out? Yeah, I know, but be patient, because for reasons I'll explain in a minute, that's what happens in filmmaking. But this is about the aerial school incident. Randall Nickerson and his team have been down. They've got hold of the witnesses. They're interviewing them. These kids who are now adults, they're in their 20s and their 30s in some cases. They stick by the story they told their teachers in 1994. And as I said to Steve Mumbling, your kids, you don't do that if you're a little kid. You don't make pranks and then years and years later, when you're a mature adult, pretend those pranks were still real. These kids were interviewed at the time by Dr. John Mack and Dominique Kalamanopoulos. They've been interviewed again by Randall Nickerson and his team. This really is a must-watch, and I can't wait to see it. And the same goes for Capel Green. Yes, this is another one where people have said, well, where is it, Ben? Where is it? It was supposed to come out years ago. Well, this happens in filmmaking. There are delays, and we were still waiting for the sequel of Avatar, aren't we? We've been waiting for years for that. Capel Green is going to well and truly reopen the Rendlesham Forest incident. It really is. It's filmed by Dion M. Johnson and Tina Magaro. Lead researcher Gary Heseltine. It's it's got some wonderful dramatic scenes. I've seen a few exclusive clips of this. They're still working on it. These guys, Dion and Tina and Gary, they're still working on it. They're getting together every day and they're working on it through the lockdown. It's a good job everything's in the can now, and they can just get on with post-production. I think there's going to be a big screen launch of this at some point, and it may. I don't know for certain. I mean, it's up to the filmmakers, but there may be a big do at Christmas when it's the 40th anniversary. It's the 40th anniversary of the RFI this coming Christmas, and that will be fun. I'll be covering that in big detail, like I covered the 30th anniversary. As you'll see, I've still got the videos up, I think. This has got new interviews, new evidence. There's a polygraph examination of Larry Warren, the principal witness. Yes, he is. I know that's come under a lot of doubt from various people. It's not real doubt, it's just lies. He is the principal witness, and he's been proven to be, I think. So honestly, do check this out. Do keep an eye on this one. I'll be covering in detail on this channel. So if you watch this channel, I'll give you all the information you need. But Cable Green is going to be big, and it's going to be good. It'll come to a big screen and a small screen near you very soon. I promise you that. And you might be interested to know that I have set up a local group here in Oxford. This idea came to me when I got back from the RawCon. I'd been thinking a lot about my life, my relationships with others, and I really feel I need to get off the internet and try and make contact with people IRL in real life who may be on the same wavelength as me, and they are there. They really are. There must be some people I can get together with in meet space. Indeed, I know that there is Sophie the Porter's poet. She lives near me, and her husband, and several other people. So I've set up Dreaming Sources. This is Oxford's premier society for UFOs, the paranormal, and government cover-ups. And I put some ads in the local media, so hopefully I'll get some people interested in this. Indeed, the advertisements in the local papers, I put it in the classified pages. It says, "Are you interested in UFOs, the paranormal, or government cover-ups? Do you live in Oxford or the surrounding area? Then why not join Dreaming Sources? We are a friendly local meetup group for like-minded people who love talking about the above subjects." And I give my email address. I've also set up a Facebook group as well. It's a private group, and it's possible some parties might need personal and professional confidentiality for obvious reasons. It's open to people from Oxford or nearby locations. I've stuck with the Dreaming Sources because that was the name of the conference I did. I've wanted to do another conference like that, and it's for various reasons it hasn't come about. But if this works out, there could be an entire team of people, rather like Truth Seekers Northeast and various of the High Wycombe Paranormal Group and these other local groups where people I don't have to be alone anymore. And I've already had some interest from several people. I've had an email from a guy, Sophie the Porter's poet, of course, is the primary honorary member. Sophie and Chris, they're a primary honorary member. And hopefully there'll be more soon. But please do check that out. If you live near Oxford, this is for you. And of course, I know we won't be meeting for a while yet because of the lockdown. But think long term. We can do a meeting at some point. And there are other ways of meetings as well, as I shall explain now. Now hopefully this will still be relevant at the time that I upload this video. I'm hoping to upload it as soon as possible so it gives you plenty of notice. I'm speaking at the East Anglia UFO group meeting, but it's not a real life meeting for obvious reasons. It's a webinar. It's going to take place on Monday the 18th of May, 7:30 p.m. UK time. And if you want to join the webinar, it's very easy. You've got to get Zoom. Now this is a free online live communications app. It's very similar to Skype or Messenger. Just go to www.zoom.us. You install it and create an account, which you can do through Facebook or Twitter. It's very, very easy. There's instructions if you're not sure about what to do. It says, don't worry if you're a Zoom virgin, it says here. Then you press a button on the page which says join. This is on the Zoom app, sorry, on the app once you've installed it. This opens a box where it prompts you to put in an ID. Now the ID is written on the poster you see here. You just put this in here and you join basically the webinar. You become like an audience member and I'll be doing the speech. East Anglia UFO are not charging for this event. It's completely free. And my lecture is entitled Exopolitics, a Path to UFO Disclosure. Exopolitics has been called the militant wing of ufology, but perhaps it is just ufologists who've made up their mind. Maybe history is about to prove them right. Is disclosure about to happen? Now this is something I've never done before, and I know the webinar is a replacement for just live performances at real life group meetings. I'd rather go to a real life group meeting, but I can't. So this I have to do this. I've never done this kind of thing before. Honestly, I have never. I expect I will do again, thanks to the lockdown. It's really, no one knows how long this is going to go on, this social distancing. But I think it's possible that we might have to, if it's really a long-term problem, we might have to get used to webinars instead of conferences. I know there's a couple of others that have been organised as well. It's really not ideal. I'd rather speak at real life events, go travel to these places, but I can't, and this is the only alternative option. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. So do get involved with this if you can. The more the merrier. And of course, what else can I say? It's the lockdown. You've got time on your hands. What better way to get through that time and to pass it in a productive and fun and entertaining way, and educational too, I hope, by reading the Roswell trilogy by Ben Emlyn Jones. Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. Roswell Revealed, a world after disclosure. And Roswell Redeemed, humanity after disclosure. Available online at all good bookshops now. Price £10.
So, what's going to happen next? I don't think anyone can possibly know that. But I'm looking at the various things that people have said, and it's all very interesting. Richard Dolan, as I said, is probably one of the best sources for this material. Oh, Stephen Bassett as well. I do really like his stuff as well. And you know, even Stephen Greer. I mean, Dr. Stephen Greer. I mean, I know I'm a critic of his in many ways, but he has his good side. So check out that new movie he's doing. Check it out. Now, what's amazing about this, and indeed Morgoth's review made this point, that the UFO secrecy I always thought would end with an explosion, yet it seems to be ending with a fizzle, a very, very slow burn. And I honestly didn't think that was possible. I didn't think it was possible for the truth embargo to end in such a controlled, frankly quite civilized manner. Now, I might be wrong. There may be an explosion at some point, but at the moment it seems to be quite smoothly and seamlessly coming out into the public domain. And of course, I know some of you, I mean, I can just see some of you shouting at your monitors right now, Ben, it's a psyop by shills. Can't you see it, Ben? Can't you see it? It's all controlled. This is just a disinfo. It's all designed to fool people like you, and you've been fooled and I haven't. This is why I'm superior to you, Ben. I can just see people doing that right now. I'm the first to say yes, there is such a thing as disinformation, but Richard Dolan said something very interesting, and in fact he said essentially the same thing that I've been saying, but he said it using different words. He said it in a different way. It's very trendy, I think, just believe that everything is a psyop. Absolutely everything that happens in the world is exactly the way that the Illuminati wanted to happen. I made this point in my 2016 videos. If something happens that seems to go against what the Illuminati want, well, it is what the Illuminati want, really. It's just done in a much more subtle and deep and crafty way, and only superior people can see through it, which is why they laugh. It is essentially a urinating contest. You know, they say these things to lord it over other people, and it's also no one. And Dolan makes this point too. No one wants to be fooled. No one wants to be seen as naive. No one wants to be seen as gullible. So therefore, it's almost an instinctive response to denounce absolutely everything as government shilldom, and people who say it, they're just shills as well. Therefore, you can't be fooled, because if you cynically reject absolutely everything that happens, then you're safe from ever being taken in, and you're safe from ever being one of the people you look down your nose at and believe is gullible. Yeah. It's a psyop by shills. Everyone's a shill except me. You see. So, and Dolan makes this point very well, actually. Yeah, but he says people often say, and I think people are right to bring this up, and I have brought this up with Kev Baker, and I brought it up in this series of videos. There are reasons to be concerned about TTSA. There are, but this doesn't mean we should automatically reject everything from TTSA. And there are people who want us to. There are people who are saying, forget TTSA, it's just shills, it's a shill operation being run by shills. Hal Puthoff is CIA, these other guys are CIA. I know. But as Dolan said, you know, just because someone was in the CIA, does that mean we should judge them a priori as shills? And the answer he comes up with, and I agree with him, is no. I think it means we have to be wary of them, but it doesn't mean we should ignore them. There was this actual tweet, I can't remember what it was by someone called Quasi Shilling or something like that. I can't remember the actual name of the person, but it was like, I can't even remember what the tweet was exactly, but it was going around the UFO circuit. What a strange world we live in, it went. The government's just admitted UFOs exist, and it's only the second most high trending thing on Twitter. Of course, you know, it is strange. I mean, obviously the coronavirus has, maybe if it weren't for the coronavirus, I wonder if it would be different. Maybe not, because it wasn't in 2017. But it does. I was looking on the BBC website, and this actually did reach number 4 in the BBC's ranking of news stories, and that's pretty impressive. You know what the bloody BBC are like. You know how mainstream and how much a bunch of liars they are. This managed to get up to number 4, which is not bad. So what happens next? Maybe this will eventually hit a logjam and there will be an explosion. The explosion that I've always predicted would be the inevitable end of disclosure. I mean, as you know, in my book, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, available all good bookshops now, and its 2 sequels. This is basically the scenario that I set out in the books, along with the fate disclosure scenario too. However, maybe what I would have considered before unthinkable is actually going to happen. We are going to have a slow descent into the post-disclosure world. I really don't know. But I would have said no, but I've been wrong before. Maybe I'm going to be again. It's too soon to tell. It's too soon to tell. But a time will come when we will know, because there's got to be an update on this. I mean, the whole situation it's pregnant with possibility. It's a scenario which I don't see this slowing down. I honestly don't. I don't see this grinding to a halt. If anything, it's accelerating. How could they possibly backtrack now? They certainly can't go back to cut the Twining memo, you know, the official ridicule and denial thing. They can't go back to that now. That tactic, that strategy, which they used for 70 whole years from 1947 to 2017, is over. It's over forever. They can only go forward, and so can we. I honestly can't see any development from this that does not involve more major breakthroughs. Whether they'll be explosive or whether they'll be a slow fizzle, like I've said, a slow burn, a smouldering, a simmering. I think that's anyone's guess right now. All bets are off. But we will know, there will be updates, and when these updates occur, you will hear them first, exclusively, live and up to date, on the Hapanwo TV YouTube channel. This has been UFO Disclosure 2020, Big D Declassification. Will the next one be called UFO 2020, Big D Disclosure? There's only one way to find out. You know, subscribe, hit the like button and hit the bell, and I'll make a video as soon as that happens. Thank you very much for watching Her Panwo TV. Hospital porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.